In this lecture, we're going to talk about different kinds of curriculum approaches that you can provide to young children, but I want to underscore that truly the most important thing of all when you're thinking about creating a teaching environment, when thinking about what curriculum to choose, is to choose something where kids can be active. Young children, truly all the way up to age 8, need opportunities to move their body, to touch, and play is best. Please take a look at the video on this slide for more information about the importance of play. As you can see from the chart at the left, child-directed play is generally best. It doesn't really matter if child-directed play was begun by the child. If it was child-initiated, that would be free play. So a child decides to start playing with something, maybe heads over to the sandbox, picks up shovels and buckets, and starts to fill and dump, and continues to direct themselves. Another example of child-directed play would be that an adult sets up the room ahead of time. For example, maybe sets out a balance scale with some various items to use in the balance scale to kind of test out the properties of which is heavier, which is lighter, allows children to come over to that area independently. Then the adult interacts with the child, asks them questions, make comments. So this would still be something where the child is directing the play, but the adult has set up a learning activity and then is facilitating while the child is using that learning activity. In direct opposition to this and less desirable would be adult-directed play. So one example of this is co-opted play, and this would be where a child, say that child who has gone over to the sandbox and wanted to dump and fill, and then along comes an adult and tells the child what to do with the shovel and the bucket instead. Hey, you should make a sandcastle. Hey, let's build it like this, and completely takes over the play that the child was engaged in. Another example of adult-directed play that we want to limit or avoid is direct instruction. So this would be where an adult is setting up the activity and then telling children specifically what they should be doing while they are over playing with that particular activity and those materials. So maybe you have set up a Mother's Day craft and you have all the materials laid out to make a flower that's going to look just like the teacher made a model of, and children are given exact materials and exact directions, and they really don't have any room to direct their own play at all. So again, we're looking for child-directed play, either free play or guided play, rather than adult-directed play, which would be co-opted play or direct instruction. The link below by Kathy Hirsch-Pasek is a good one to look at. It gives you a little bit more information about the utility of free play and guided play. In addition to the best way to facilitate children's learning, other teaching considerations that you should pay attention to is making sure to carefully choose activities and experiences. So experiences should be meaningful, something that children are interested in. Best is if the children themselves tell you that that's something that they would like to learn about and explore. Making sure to choose activities that meet children's developmental needs, that provide them with opportunities to interact with others and touch and do and move. So just really being careful about making sure that the activities that you choose are both individually, culturally, and age appropriate for the children. So when we are thinking about this idea of choosing activities and experiences, that's what we typically call curriculum. So if you walk into a classroom and teachers are interacting with children in certain kinds of ways, facilitating learning in a particular kind of way, choosing particular kinds of activities and experiences, when we take that package of how do we best help children to learn and grow, that's what we call the curriculum. So there are different definitions of curriculum, so I want you to understand that it's, there isn't a universal definition of curriculum. Sometimes people refer to curriculum as very specific activities or lessons. Sometimes people are thinking about curriculum more broadly, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. So thinking of curriculum as being something that is play-based. So then underneath that rubric of being play-based, then you choose activities or lessons or specific things that children are going to be doing. And then some people define curriculum even more broadly and include the daily routines, the way the furniture is set up, the tone of the classroom environment, teacher behaviors that are exhibited. They're taking the whole big giant package of the environment in totality. So these are all correct ways of thinking about curriculum. We're just going to focus on that middle one. We're going to focus on that idea of kind of a general approach that guides your activity and lesson planning choices and your choices about how you're going to best interact with children and facilitate their learning. And so again, we're going to be focusing on these play-based curricular approaches. The decision about what type of curriculum to use typically is associated with what you believe, what kind of theories you subscribe to, how you think children best learn and grow. So when we think about curriculum, I think sometimes we're so busy focusing on the activities or the lessons that are being planned, we forget that most of the time curriculum, or the best curriculum, comes from a theoretical approach. So if you believe that play is super important, that you believe that that's the vehicle through which children learn, you probably come from a constructivist theoretical background or a progressive education theoretical background. If you believe that learning best happens when adults are directly teaching children things, where children are more passive in their learning, it's not so active and hands-on, you probably are emanating from more of a behavioral theoretical approach or from a more direct instruction kind of model approach. So it's really important for us to think about the educational models or the theories that are sitting behind these curriculum choices. So again, if you are making play-based curriculum choices, you probably have a particular theoretical orientation, like I said, more than likely constructivist or progressive education, whereas if you are more comfortable with kind of a traditional elementary school model where the teacher stands up front and delivers instruction to children, you're probably more behavioral or kind of a direct instruction person. So the articles on this page give you more information about each of these educational models or these different theories, but just to know that direct instruction is based off of behaviorism. Constructivism is based off of Piaget's ideas, so children have to construct their own knowledge by hands-on experiences with the environment. And then progressive education is typically attributed to John Dewey. John Dewey thought that children had to have real life experiences where they had at least some measure of control over their learning environment to help them be ready to participate in adult society. So be able to make choices and be self-determined and participate in society effectively. So depending on what kind of resonates with you, that might be why you lean towards particular kinds of curricular approaches because of the educational models or theories that you subscribe to. So as I was just saying, a curricular approach or a particular curriculum way of doing things should be guided by an educational model or a developmental theory. So as we also noted earlier, when we're thinking about curricular approaches or curriculum in this particular class, we're going to be thinking about that as sort of that kind of middle ground. So not everything that happens in the room, but not just the activities. So we're going to consider curriculum or a curriculum approach to be a particular way of implementing activities. So in this case, we're going to be focusing on play-based ways of facilitating activities, certain ways of interacting with children, so thinking about that guided play, that guided discovery kind of stuff, and then that factors into sort of how we're going to approach teaching. So if you're kind of play-based and you're more into that guided experience, you're not going to be doing a lot of direct instruction. It's going to be much more child-initiated kinds of activities. So to further flesh this out about curricular approaches and the ways in which they might vary from one another, I wanted to dive into some of the elements that make curricular approaches different. So one is, what is the role of teachers? Are they directly teaching young children? Are they facilitating? So they're kind of scaffolding or helping learning, but they're not directly instructing children, or are they just completely hands-off? They're not doing a whole lot of anything. How are children participating? Are they only participating in activities that are completely led and devised by the adults in the room? Or are they getting to choose activities, choose who they want to play with, choose the ways in which they might use materials that are offered to them? That's an important consideration. What's the classroom structure? Are adults kind of following a completely adult-led schedule? They're told where to sit, they're told what activities to be doing at a particular time, they're told how long to stay there, they're told what to do with the materials when they get there, or is it more free-flowing? Do they get to move about the classroom sort of at will? Do they get to choose their own activities and who they'd like to participate in them with, how much time they would like to spend, what they would like to do with those materials when they're there? And then, what is the curriculum focus? Does it focus on a particular developmental domain? Some curriculum are completely focused on fleshing out children's dramatic play opportunities, or a curriculum might focus heavily on literacy or moral development, or it may be an arts-based curriculum. Are we trying to get a particular life skill? So I was saying earlier that John Dewey, with his progressive education, was very interested in social studies because he wanted children to gain the skills that they would need to participate in a democracy when they grew up, so that they were ready for that particular life skill. So a lot of times curricular approaches get boiled down to two basic types. So a lot of times you'll see comparisons between curricular approaches that are more play-based in nature, and then curricular approaches that are more academic or direct instruction in nature. And so I did want to provide this little graphic for you so that you can see how these two kind of broader approaches might vary on some of the things that we were just talking about. So play-based programs tend to be focused on building leadership and social skills. Academics are built into play experiences, they're not separated out. Teachers are facilitated, it's child-led or child-centric, whereas academic programs, they tend to be more teacher-centric. There's more of a focus on finding the right answer rather than just sort of the process of learning. They encourage following the teacher's lead. There's a heavy focus on those traditional school academic subjects of reading, writing, and math. I would love to say that it doesn't matter which theory or educational model or curricular approach that you subscribe to, but honestly it does. So when we're thinking about young children, there have been shown to be better outcomes when curricular approaches are more play-based in nature. So programs that utilize child-initiated learning, where teachers are doing facilitation rather than direct instruction, tend to have better outcomes. So when we think about academics, developmentally appropriate programs that are play-based in nature, they are associated actually with increased academic functioning. I think sometimes people think, oh, if I'm directly instructing, these reading, writing, and math things, that children will do better academically, but that doesn't actually seem to be the case. Children in play-based programs do as well or better in terms of academics. We have higher cognitive functioning when children are going to play-based programs, which are considered to be more developmentally appropriate. They have better school liking, they have better motivation, and then those didactic or direct instruction, behavioral kinds of programs for young children, unfortunately, they're not associated with increased academics, and they are associated with more school stress, greater levels of grade retention, higher levels of misconduct, and higher levels of emotional disturbance. So on this page, you can take a look at an example of a play-based or a developmentally appropriate program, and then you can also click on the other link to see an example of a didactic or a direct instruction program. On this slide and the next two slides after that are examples of different kinds of curricular approaches or curriculum models. There's also more information posted on Blackboard. There is a PDF that I'm putting up for this week that talks about curriculum models principles, gives a little bit more information about the curricular approach examples that I've provided on these three slides, and then there are also some additional curricular models on that handout as well. We'll be talking more about TK or transitional kindergarten during our last lecture on assessment.